Hi, I'm Preston Williams, the Jazz Hatter, and today I'd like to share with you some of my famous jazz albums that I have autographed by some of the greats of all time. I wanted to start out by showing you this album. This is by piano great McCoy Tyner. It's called The Real McCoy, and this is what I would call McCoy Tyner's breakout album from 1967. It features Joe Henderson, Elvin Jones, and the bass player is Ron Carter. I actually met Ron Carter and he signed this for me. This may be McCoy Tyner's best. He did this just before John Coltrane passed away, and this was sort of like, I would say, his breakout album just prior to Coltrane's passing. And it really has some great stuff on here like Blues on the Corner and Passion Dance, and it's an all-time classic, McCoy Tyner. Next album we have, and this is very, very special. This is Miles Davis, Bitches Brew. One of Miles's most, probably one of his most famous albums, along with Kind of Blue. I was very, very fortunate to meet most of the musicians in the band, and they signed this. As you can see, has everyone's name. Herbie Hancock is not on it, but he signed it. But it's got Herbie's name on it, Lenny Waite, Jack DeJohnette, Wayne Shorter, John McLaughlin, Dave Holland. And it's very, very rare. I am supposed to be seeing Chick Corea in another, I'd say a couple of weeks, so maybe I can get him to sign this. Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, one of his best. Another album that I have here is by Return to Forever. It was signed by Chick Corea and Stanley Clarke. One of their best. They made two albums. Actually, they made quite a few albums, but the two that resonate or people remember most is No Mystery and Romantic Warrior. And this was actually the last LP they made just before they split up in 1976. It's really a classic. Return to Forever, Romantic Warrior. Another one that I just mentioned by Return to Forever, this is called No Mystery. Features the lineup of Chick Corea, Lenny White, Stanley Clarke, and Al Di Meola on the guitars. It's a great album. I have it signed by Stanley Clarke and Lenny White, one of my favorites. No Mystery. This album is by Stanley Clarke. One of probably the album that sort of, I guess, I would say, had people, I guess, recognizing his talents. I mean, School Days, of course, is the classic, which I'm about to get to next. But Stanley signed this. This is a self-titled one. He actually made an album before this in 1973 called Journey to Love. Excuse me, not Journey to Love, but Children Are Forever. This is one of my personal favorites and a must-have for any jazz bass player. The next album that I had mentioned is probably the LP Stanley's most known for. He signed this for me. This is School Days. He made this in 1976. It's a classic. Most people who play bass, know who Stanley Clarke is and pick up School Days. The next album, this is very special to me, The World According to John Coltrane. It's actually a laser disc, but the cover is so nice. I had it signed by Jimmy Heath. Jimmy Heath is actually on the documentary. And just here's some rare photos in here talking about Coltrane. And yeah, Jimmy Heath signed this. And actually, I got this signed at the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz. Let's see, September 23rd. It says, John, my dear friend, Jimmy Heath. So pick up a copy of The World According to John Coltrane. This was signed by Miles Davis's drummer, Jimmy Cobb, the only surviving member of Kind of Blue. He's the only one living from the date. And this has, of course, Paul Chambers, Coltrane, Wynton Kelly, and let's see who else. Hank Mobley's on here, and he signed it. That's a picture of Miles Davis's wife, Frances. They were married at the time, and Miles was very adamant about having a black woman on the cover, and of course that black woman was his wife. A fantastic LP. This, Miles Davis, in a silent way, was signed by Dave Holland, the bass player. I met him a couple of times, and he signed this for me, along with Bitches Brew, which I just went over. A fantastic monster album. People say that there are two albums that Miles Davis did to begin the whole fusion period. One is this, In a Silent Way, and the second one is Bitches Brew. And this is one of my personal favorites by Miles. This LP is by saxophonist David Murray. What an interesting cover. It's called Children, and he signed this when I saw him in 2012 at a jazz club in Baltimore called Andi Music. A wonderful jazz club. Been going there quite a bit, and this is a fantastic album which features some really good music. Pick it up if you don't have it. This is one of my special covers. I love this cover. I love the lady. As you can see, nice smile on the back. But this is beautifully done by the great Dee Dee Bridgewater, self-titled LP. She signed it for me and just wrote Preston. Thank you, Dee Dee Bridgewater. Fantastic artist, one of the greatest jazz vocalists around today. And it's one of my personal favorites. Next album is an interesting cover. It sort of turns heads when you first see it. Miles Davis on the Corner. I mean, funky. Drummer Billy Hart signed this for me. I caught him in Rockville last year at the was it the Rockville International Jazz concert and or Jazz Festival rather. And yeah, just a wonderful LP. Miles was really stretching out around this time. His influences were Sly and the Family Stone. He was listening to James Brown, Jimi Hendrix. So Miles incorporates this on this wonderful LP. This is signed by one of the greatest guitarists that you'll ever hear. I met John McLaughlin and his famous band, Mahavishnu Orchestra. Two LPs that they're known for. This one, Birds of Fire, and The Intermounting Flame. And this one was done in 1973. John signed this for me. Caught him in his group. The Fourth Dimension, they were at a Howard Theater in Washington, D.C. last year. So this is essential for your John McLaughlin collection if you like jazz fusion guitar. Another great jazz artist, Lenny White, a fantastic drummer who, of course, was with Return to Forever, and he's been on multiple recordings. He signed this for me. This is one of my favorite recordings. It's called Big City, and it's actually an early recording that has Miles Davis's bass player back in the 80s on it, and that's a young Marcus Miller, who I think this is one of the first albums that he was on, and very good album. You should pick it up. The next LP is by my favorite bass player, who's probably considered by many to be the greatest bass player of all time, the late, great Jaco Pastorius, Invitation. This was signed by his drummer, Peter Erskine. I saw Peter at the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz, and Peter signed this, and just a pleasure to sit down with him, have dinner with him, and we share some Jaco stories. Jaco is greatly missed, but never duplicated or never forgotten. This, of course, was one of Miles Davis's most famous recordings after, Kinda Blue and Bitches Brew. This is Tutu, signed by Marcus Miller, who's the bass player, and has some great cuts on here like Backyard Ritual and Splash. And Miles, of course, always being the innovator that he is. I call him the soul cat, and he just took the music to a new level. Pick up Tutu, one of my favorites. This, to me, what I'm about to show is what I would call a landmark recording. This is Jaco Pastorius, his self-titled LP, signed by Lenny White. He's the drummer on here. And this album basically opened the world to everything with bass players. Bass players have come to look at this album as sort of the standard with harmonics, Jaco's changes, his chord voicings, how he just moves through the notes. And when he played Donna Lee on here, people could not believe what they were hearing. Same thing with the song Portrait of Tracy with the use of harmonics. I mean, people had never heard anything like that before. Jaco, to me, is still the standard in which all bass players are measured. And this LP, when you listen to it, you can tell why. Herbie Hancock actually writes something on here about Jaco, how he's a phenomenon. Pick it up, Jaco Pastorius. This is what I would call a smooth jazz LP, a great LP with David Sanborn and Bob James, Double Vision, signed again by bass player Marcus Miller. What can I say? It has some great songs on here. My personal favorite, of course, is Maputo, first cut on here. And Al Jarreau makes an appearance. He sings his version of Since I Fell For You. Great recording from 1986, and I still listen to it a lot this day. My all-time favorite group, as everyone knows, the greatest of all time, Earth, Wind and Fire, led by visionary and vocalist drummer, conceptualist Maurice White, along with Philip Bailey Verdine. I had this signed at an Earth, Wind and Fire concert by Verdine, White, and Ralph Johnson. This is one of my personal favorites by them, Spirit, 1976, and it was also the last album that the late, great Charles Stepney did before passing away of a heart attack. Another favorite of mine by Earth, Wind and Fire, Last Days and Times, signed by Ralph Johnson. This is their first recording on Columbia Records. 1972 has some just amazing songs on here with Roland Bautista, who just passed away a couple of years ago, the great guitarist. Also Ronnie Laws, who adds some of his saxophone work. And they did some really, really special songs on here. One of my personal favorites, two of them, are Mom and I'd Rather Have You, sung by Jessica Cleaves, who used to be with them. They used to have two women in their group. The first one was Sherry Scott, and that was more on the Warner Brothers recordings. And this, their debut album for Columbia, she sang a few songs on that. This is the last album that I had signed by Earth, Wind and Fire, again by Ralph and Verdine. Another personal favorite of mine, Open Our Eyes. I tend to like their early stuff before they became very commercial. Basically, everything they did is great, but especially between like 72 and 77 up to like All in All. But Open Our Eyes is like just a monster album, you know, with a drum song, Open Our Eyes, Mighty Mighty, Feeling Blue, Caribou. You know, it's great. And from 1973, Open Our Eyes. Next album is another rare one. This is Miles and Monk at Newport, Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk. And the unique thing, I got the two surviving members. This is what was special about this. The two surviving members of both of these groups signed it. Butch Warren, who just passed away in October of 2013. And of course, Jimmy Cobb, who's still with us, 85 years old, going strong. This recording was from the mid-50s, I believe, 1958. And they didn't actually play together, but they were on... they were at Newport at different times. I think Monk's group was 63 and Miles 1958. Smash album. The next recording is by one of my favorite drummers, Jack DeJohnette. Saw him at the Kennedy Center. This is one of the albums that he did. Monster group that he used to have with Lester Boyd, the late Lester Boyd trumpeter, Eddie Gomez, bass player, and trying to think of John Abercrombie, the guitarist. This is a wonderful album. Pick it up. Signed by brother Jack DeJohnette. Another one of Jack's great albums, which is sort of rare, I think it's out of print, hard to find, is the Jack DeJohnette Complex. Jack signed that for me as well. Great album. He made one of his early ones from like the late 60s, and I believe drummer Roy Haynes is on it as well. Of course, this is a well-known album, a very good album that he did back in '90 with Herbie Hancock and Pat Metheny. It's called Parallel Realities. And this album cover is actually designed by Jack DeJohnette's wife, Lydia. And Jack signed this for me as well. Great album. Really good album. There's also a DVD concert of the music from this album, and you should pick it up. This was signed by guitarist Larry Coryell. Fantastic album. This is one of their best. 11th House, Larry Coryell. Saw him at Blues Alley with a group that he had with drummer Jimmy Cobb and Joey DeFrancisco, the keyboardist. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But a monster album signed by him. Another one of my favorite bassists, acoustic bass players, is Cecil McBee. I've been listening to him for years. First heard about him when he used to be on the Strata East label. They made some monster albums. He used to play with a group with Jimmy Hopps. Let me see, who else was on that? Pianist Stanley Cowell and Charles Tolliver, the trumpeter. But this is a great album. Cecil McBee Sextet, he signed this for me. Great album. Highly recommend it. Next album is maybe the most well-known recording in any type of music, and it's by Herbie Hancock. It's called Headhunters. Herbie signed this for me. Great recording. Everyone knows this album. One of Herbie's most successful, made in 1973. Headhunters. I think every jazz person or R&B person probably would have this in their collection, and I highly recommend it. Next recording is by drummer Billy Hart.